I used to work just a few years ago with a really talented young man by the name of Matt Walsh. Matt joined a radio station I was working at, and I was doing a show from 3 until 7 every afternoon. And then Matt would come in, and he would be on the air from 7 until 10. And he was a dyed-in-the-wool libertarian to a degree. I say to a degree because he came from a very devout Roman Catholic family. Matt's sister is a nun, in fact, which a lot of young women don't take that route anymore. But they were very devoted to the church, and they believed what they heard when they went there on Sundays. They weren't what is often called a cafeteria Catholic, and you hear that at some other churches too as cafeteria Christians. So he tried his best to live the faith. I can't say we were great friends because I would see him in passing. I would be cleaning up my stuff in the booth, and he'd be coming in. We'd get to speak for a couple of minutes, and then he'd go on the air, and I'd go home, and then that was the extent of our relationship. And I never knew this until I believe he'd been gone a few years. That he left. He went to a radio station in Kentucky, and then he got a job with the Blaze. That's Glenn Beck's publication, and he got a job with the Blaze, and he's been there ever since. He's a tremendous writer. In fact, even Alan West frequently cites him when Alan West is writing his own columns, and mentions that Matt is an incredibly talented and bright young man. I later found out that the reason Matt was let go from the radio station is because we had an advertiser who didn't like the fact that he actually talked about his Christian faith on the air, and he was also very adamant about, how shall we put it, people's sexuality, and he believed in a biblical notion of it. And that apparently hurt the feelings of some people in the community, that 2%. So the station let him go. Isn't it funny? He turns around and he ends up writing for one of the best political publications in all of America. So sometimes, even in those bad moments, things turn out good for you. So Matt was responding to something Hillary Clinton said yesterday. First, let me tell you about what Hillary said. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton likened the 2016 Republican presidential field to terrorist groups on women's issues during a campaign stop Thursday in Ohio. While speaking to a crowd at Case Western Reserve University, Clinton said that while she expects extreme views on women's rights to be espoused by terrorist groups, she does not expect the same from Republicans who want to be president in 2016. The former Secretary of State named Florida Senator Marco Rubio, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, and Ohio Governor John Kasich in the speech. I guess she missed out on Jindal and Mike Huckabee and some of the others. But here's the thing. Matt made a great point in his post yesterday, and he said this. Terrorists kill innocent people. Abortion is the killing of innocent people. And as he said it, he pointed out in his piece, Hillary Clinton has apparently missed that point. The definition of a terrorist is someone, in his view, who is killing innocent people. What is more innocent than a baby in its mother's womb, defenseless baby in its mother's womb? It shows you, Matt would say, don't use the word hypocrisy. He had a rule against that. But it just shows you the duplicity that these people have. 10 minutes after 9 o'clock, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 64. Our telephone number, 736-0300, 736-0300, and you're on the air.
Yeah, Bill, I just, every day I think about where we are and what we're going to do about it, and if we got the cojones to get something done, or if there's enough of us. And yesterday, Glenn Beck had a guest on and was talking about the mystery of the Shemitah, and I bought the book, and I just have never gotten it read, but it is truly intriguing. And you see, I guess yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine, and a guy I just met actually, and I said to him, I said, sometimes it just comes down to default. You just end up believing in God because there's literally nothing else that you can put your faith in that is on earth, so to speak. And I said, of course, that isn't really how I feel about it. But you see, when we turn away from God, we're running one hell of a risk personally and collectively. And one more thing about turning away from God. Yesterday, Beck, one of these ladies that was working at a clinic, and she was a manager, of this clinic, Planned Parenthood clinic, and the key code to the place was 2229, which punches out to be baby. And they were storing baby parts in the freezer, and they called it the nursery. The freezer was the nursery. This is where we are, and it's a scary thought, ain't it?
Sure is. And again, they're playing with the language. And by playing with the language, they try to shift the debate and to give people the impression everything is fine and it's okay. And it's straight out of Orwell. His real name, Eric Blair, we should point out. But he wrote the books Animal Farm and 1984. And the notion being that all you have to do is change the language and keep repeating it. Keep repeating it over and over and over again. And eventually a great many people will buy into it. Because if you actually had to describe things the way they actually are, the public would be absolutely appalled. The majority, overwhelming majority, would be absolutely appalled, and they would demand changes. So they can't have that. Killing little babies is a liberal sacrament. And the church, the godless church of liberalism, it's what they do. For convenience, but they can't say it's for convenience. So they have to take this approach. There's a fellow by the name of Michael Peroutka, who I happened to see a few times speak. He's with something called, I believe it's the Institute for the Constitution or Institute on the Constitution. And he has been a Constitution Party candidate, in fact, for president way back in 2004. And then I guess there was a fellow named Dr. Baldwin in 2008. And then in 2012, it was a guy named Virgil Good. Virgil and I got on really well because Virgil's family, longtime family doctor, apparently was a distant relative of mine, same last name. But these people, they are constitutionalists. But I went to hear Michael Peroutka speak in the firehouse in my hometown about 2 years ago. And he actually brought his documentation along. For all of those people who say that our founding fathers were not Christians or that they were godless, you'll hear, oh, well, they were deists. Well, maybe Jefferson was, but Jefferson actually, even though he cut out a lot of pages in the Bible that he didn't think belonged there, he still believed, let me put it that way, he still believed that there was a Jesus and that he was the Christ. Can we make that point? And when they hear that argument, well, they were all deists or atheists and they didn't care. so this is the government that they wanted, and so that's why we're going to ram it down your throats. That's not true. George Washington was a deacon at his Anglican church, later Episcopalian. Most of the New Englanders, they were from Congregationalist churches. And you had a lot of Methodists as well. Michael Peroutka he's a lawyer, smart guy. He has documented this. Madison himself wrote extensively about why people needed religious faith. He felt it was going to be the foundation that made all of these things stand. Why is it that these men actually came up with these ideas? They got them from the Age of Enlightenment. Where did the Age of Enlightenment come from? It came from something called the Protestant Reformation, where men started saying, you know what? I should be able to read this Bible on my own, and I am equal to the king. All men are equal. Jesus didn't love the king more than he loved me. And so those ideas came down through all of the writings for 300 or 400 years that led to the establishment of the United States and its Constitution. If you get a chance, just go to a search engine, look up Michael Peroutka, Peroutka, TKA. He is reviled, by the way, by the folks on the left for, I think that's a badge of honor, but reviled for what he believes in. And I really think you need to check that out. And it should give you a great insight into it. And if you could ever even see some of his presentations there on YouTube, you would just be blown away. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story. It's 9:16 and 64. What's on your mind?
Hey, Bill. I was just going to tell you that I think there's an awakening in this country. I really do. People, the leftists out there just continuously pounding away at saying everybody thinks the way they do and they're the majority. But let me tell you, I know there is just too many people out here that are so fed up with this political correctness. And it's just like when Trump would say, that when he would bash political correctness, he just went up and just in his ratings just went up higher and higher. People are so sick of this stuff. that I kid you not. You know, these leftists, they really think they got a handle on things still, but they don't. They don't, Bill. I can see it. I can feel it. And we have not lost this country by far.
I'd agree with that. And I thank you for the call. There are 4 candidates running in the Republican primaries who say that they will sign a pledge in support of traditional marriage. 4. Unfortunately, Mike Huckabee wasn't one of them. That one surprised me. Well, he and several other candidates say they won't be signing any pledges. George W. Bush, H.W. Bush, rather, was the first person who probably made a pledge he shouldn't have made. And of course, but see, what do you believe in? What is your core belief? And if you have that core belief, then you can sign it. Should point out a group of black pastors have presented the Smithsonian with a petition with tens of thousands of signatures to remove a bust of the founder of Planned Parenthood. She was, of course, a virulent racist. Her name, Margaret Sanger. Well, the Smithsonian. So, you know, if you can remove the Confederate flag because it's about hate, then Margaret Sanger, who wanted to establish Planned Parenthood so we could abort black babies primarily, and still today, the black community makes up 13% of the population, 30% or 37% of women getting abortions are black. It was her way to eliminate, through infanticide, the black race. So if we have to eliminate the Confederate flag, then I guess we have to take her bust out of the Smithsonian. Let's see how Lefty goes along with that. By Lefty's logic, it makes complete sense. You're up next. You're on the air on Top Story on KLIX.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. You know, I don't agree with everything you say, but quite a bit of it. But I did have a question. I know you talk about your dad once in a while. Is he still alive, or have you lost your dad?
No, he's been gone about 20 years now.
Okay, that's what I kind of figured. But, you know, I heard you 2 weeks ago, I think, talking about some of the, you were referring to him and how he brought you up and some of the things he instilled in you growing up. And I just want to tell you that if today parents were more like what your dad was, we'd have a lot fewer problems with our children and people growing up with different ideas and not good character. So I've been very impressed with what you said about how your dad had brought you up and what he instilled in you, and I thank him for that.
I thank him, too, and I thank you for the telephone call. My old man was about 6.5 feet tall, weighed about 250 pounds when he was in his best days, and I saw him in action a couple of times. In fact, one of my friend's fathers, one of my best friend's dads, told me a story about seeing my dad one time clean out a motorcycle gang from a nightclub, throwing them through the door one by one. And yet he was not the serious disciplinarian in the family. My mother, who was only about 5'1" but grew up on the farm and tough, she laid down the law. And believe me, we didn't cross her whatsoever. As she used to say to us on that first day of school when we didn't want to get up, "Get your blank out of bed." And you did it.